not quite at Oilers at the quarter pole, but we're kind of at a natural break. We're talking here after their pair of wins over the Ottawa Senators. They have a nice big 3-day break, the first break of the season. They've been playing every other night, had a couple of back-to-backs. What have you seen so far from this team? It's been a very Jekyll and Hyde so far. Maybe the recent success is an outlier overall. The Oilers steamrolled Ottawa, more or less. They were, I don't think, ever in danger of giving up their multiple goal leads in those games, although you never know. What's the first thing you think about when you think about the Oilers' first quarter of the season?
It didn't start off great. Obviously, 3-6 had everybody a little bit nervous and maybe a little bit rattled. But they're 12 games in, and 8 of those games have either been against the two best teams in the league or the worst teams in the league. So you kind of really haven't had a look at that median part of the schedule yet, with the Vancouver, the Calgary, and the Winnipegs and Edmonton, those 4 teams that are going to be fighting probably for those last 2 spots. So, they've to be 6-6 when 6 of those games were against Toronto and Montreal and the Oilers weren't at their best by a long stretch is not bad. So I think they're right when they're kind of taking a deep breath and saying, it was good on us to get back to 500 at this break with that 3-game winning streak, but you beat up on Ottawa a couple of times. I don't know what you read into that, and you get swept by Montreal, which is probably maybe the best team in certainly North Division. Don't know how much you can read into that early in the season. So still a bit of a mystery to me, but at least they're kind of getting things in order, and we're going to have a better idea of who they are certainly by the end of this month.
Obviously, the more you win, the more comfortable you can feel. And no matter what your situation is, whether you have a full 82-game season or the shortened one, but this is a shortened one, 56 games. It's more of a sprint than it is a marathon to the end of the season. And, the more you can pile up points, the less pressure there is. But it's the same for every team. I mean, no one had a preseason. There were no preseason games, a very short camp. Everybody had the same handcuff that way. And yet it was Edmonton who needed to adjust. I mean, they were missing Oscar Klefbom. He's not playing this season. They have Tyson Barrie essentially as his replacement. They have some changes in the lineup as well. But so does every team in the NHL.
Yeah, they had 6 or 7 new faces in the lineup, and they were in key positions too. Like Tyson Barrie was supposed to be taking over what was their bread and butter last year. Like the Oilers go as the power play goes, and they had a new guy at the helm on that, and it wasn't great out of the box. And then Dominic Cahoon is charged with being a top 6 forward and helping that second line generate a ton of offense. And he was a little slow out of the box as well. But as over the last couple of games, Tyson Barrie has 6 points in his last 3 games. Dominic Cahoon had 2 goals in 2 games. So if those guys are starting to come to life a little bit, that's big news for Edmonton, because it's a weird season. It is a sprint, but at the same time, you're grinding it out. Like, you could be 6 points behind a team and then play them in a 3-game series. Like, you can reel the guys in front of you if you win those head-to-head games. So just the enormity of all these games matters so much, and every single overtime point matters so much, because every single night of the season, no matter what, either somebody is catching up on you or somebody is pulling away. Like, every night somebody's getting points. So, the key to survival, if you're Edmonton or anybody else, is to just be consistent and just be grinding up points constantly, because any little stretch, like, a 3-game losing streak, it takes you a while to recover from, because, like I said earlier, everybody is getting points every night, no matter what.
And obviously that's one of the big differences. That's one of the big differences this season. Every game is a 4-point game. You're only playing the teams in your division. You're not playing anybody else. And things can get magnified. So I suppose players, coaches, they're probably keeping that in mind to not beat yourself up too much, because you're behind in the standings. You're only at 500 and Montreal has a loss or whatever it is in the standings. So I guess even for a team like Ottawa, who clearly has struggled to start the season and they have a young lineup, the season is not decided yet, obviously.
Yeah, normally you start asking people what's wrong 9 games into the season, and the players would look at you like out of the corner of their eye, like, what are you thinking, dude? There's a million miles to go. But even the players themselves were looking at these games, the last 3 games, talking about, this is massive and we have to turn things around. And so they're not kidding themselves. They have a sense of how important these games are. And it's, like I said earlier, if Toronto and Montreal stay true to form, then it's 4 teams and 2 playoff spots. So these head-to-head games between Edmonton and Calgary, Edmonton and Winnipeg, Edmonton and Vancouver are just monumental because, you get one sweep. When we saw what happened against Montreal, Edmonton got swept in one series and it took them, 2 weeks to recover from it. So you got to stay on top of it, and you can't let games slip away. You can't sleepwalk through any sort of games because, again, you got a head-to-head game with the team that you're trying to catch, but again, every single night somebody's getting points no matter what. It's not like all three teams in your division were in action tonight, but they lost to teams from the East, so you made up 2 points. It's not happening. Somebody in the West, somebody in the North is winning every night. So you better be one of them, because if not, you're losing ground.
It doesn't remind me of it because I wasn't alive when there was an original six league, but this is probably what it was like all the time back then. The Montreal Canadiens were the belles of the ball for seemingly forever. But I imagine it smacks of what old timers used to see back in the 40s, 50s, into the 60s.
Yeah, and if you had a weak team like the Senators are right now, and you're playing them 9 times, you pile up your stats big time. So it would be interesting to go back and look and see how some of those series went, because eventually you get to a point where everybody has found their high water mark, and you know who the good teams are and you know who the bad teams are, and the good teams continually feast on the poor and get that sort of separation. We haven't seen it yet in the North, just maybe a little bit with Toronto, Montreal, but again, we're very early. To me, it's the most compelling season we've had in forever because, I admit I'm paying a lot less attention to what's happening outside the North Division, because all that matters for this entire year and 2 rounds of the playoffs is what happens in the North. And this is a great year. There's great talent, great teams. If you're picking an all-star team from all 4 divisions, I like the North Division when, either Markstrom, Connor Hellebuyck, or Carey Price, one of those guys doesn't make your team as a starting goalie. So, yeah, I love the way the North is going this year, and I it's pandemic or not, this is a great way to spend a season.